Hi, this is Gil Aminadov. Welcome to the Open Judaism Q&A, question and answer session. Hey, Gamliel Shabbat Tov, how you doing?
Shabbat Tov. I'm good,
Siman Tov.
man. Kind of
What's
annoyed right now.
wow? What's up?
There's this room going on right now where this guy converted to Orthodox Judaism, and
Okay.
now he's on here teaching Christians how to missionize Jews.
Oh,
So it's really infuriating.
that's kind of crazy. What's the tactic that he's advising?
Like he's explaining. He's trying to use like the Zohar, and he's explaining. He's giving them positions in like the Gemara and different things to have them use against Jews to convert them to Christianity.
Right, I can hear that. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation to deal with because on the one hand, we want to invite people in, we want to have an open door, big tent. On the other hand, there are some people who then take advantage of that and do
Yeah,
have, an ulterior agenda.
yeah,
And
this is crazy, man.
there was a lot of missionary activity actually increasing operating in the Orthodox and Haredi communities. In Israel, here we had a bunch of cases during, I think actually one of the guys died during COVID, and then they found out that he was a missionary afterwards.
What? That is
Yeah, there was
crazy.
someone who they only deduced it after he died or some crazy stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's a serious thing to deal with. And I can appreciate that would be aggravating as someone who is, trying to join up with good intentions. It's tough to see someone, so flagrantly, upset the apple cart in that regard. All right, what's our question this week, guys? Darius, you want to take the lead?
Okay, there we
Shalom,
go.
shalom.
Yeah,
Go.
it went
Yeah.
silent on me for a second.
Yeah, okay.
Shabbat.
Shabbat Tov and Barach. What's your questions this week?
My question is about how the halakha on the halakhic Jew is in line with what we see in Devarim 26, Pesukim 14 and 15.
Hold on, let's pull up Safaria. Pulling it up. All right. We are looking for Devarim.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Kaf Vav, Pesuk Yod Dalet, and Pesuk Tet Vav.
Okay. So לא אכלתי בוני ממנו ולביערתי ממנו בטעמי ולא נתתי ממנו למת שמעתי בקול אדוני אלוהי עשיתי ככל אשר ציוויתני השקיפה ממעון קודשך מן השמיים וברך את עמך את ישראל ואת האדמה אשר נתת לנו כאשר נשבעת לאבותינו ארץ זבת חלב ודבש. So what's the question about these psukim?
The Pesukim clearly state that observance, or Torah observance, and being a shomer of the mitzvot is a criteria of the Berit.
Yeah.
Today, the Berit has been extended to a Jewish mother, to
I see what you're saying.
exactly. The Berit
So
is no longer in um, observance. It now can be a non-observant, an atheist, a Muslim, as long as you're halachically seen to come from a Jewish mother or had a
or
Jewish
you
conversion.
or you're a ger, meaning a ger who then, regardless of what the ger does, is still considered Jewish, because we have this principle that afal pishu chata Yisraelu. Even though someone does a chait, They're still Yisrael. And it's basically a way of avoiding the no true Scotsman fallacy. You familiar with that argument, the no true Scotsman argument, that anytime someone says, well, Scotsmen are like this, and someone gives you a counterexample, you say, oh, well, that's not really a Scotsman. Scotsmen are like, I'm talking about these people. And then someone says, what about this? And they say, well, no, I'm not talking about all Scots. I'm talking about these people, right? So if otherwise if we don't just have a sufficiently blanket definition of who is a Jew, or a stable definition of who is a Jew, shall we say, then it's really hard to have a Jew at all. I was actually thinking, if there weren't questions tonight, I was going to flip some questions on you guys, and you guys came in with questions. But let me pose a question to you guys, Darius and Gamliel. What is a Jew?
A son of Elohim.
So you're saying only Jews are sons of Elohim, and only sons of Elohim are Jews?
When you put it like that, I want to change my answer.
Right?
But I believe we're all B'Tselem Elohim. But I believe that
Right?
there are only a specific group of people who are going to access his servants, his light into the Goyim. So I would say that the Jews are the light to the Goyim, the ones who are bringing the Torah to the world to make the world more aware of Hashem.
So someone who's making the world more aware of Hashem is a Jew. That's your answer. Gam, do you have an answer too, or you want to go with Darius's?
Okay, you said so. What is a Jew?
Yeah, what is a Jew?
Woo! Is this philosophical, archaeological? Like, oh, what's your angle?
Take an angle. Take the primary angle.
The primary angle. So I understand that, from my understanding of Jewish tradition, a Jew is someone that strives to serve Hashem through the mitzvot and be a light to the nations.
And only a Jew can strive to serve Hashem through mitzvot, and only people who strive to serve Hashem through mitzvot are Jews?
Say that one more time.
Are those two synonymous? You're saying that only Jews are people who strive to fulfill Hashem's will through the mitzvot, and only people who strive to fulfill Hashem's will through the mitzvot are Jews? Like, is it really like that?
No, it's not really like that, but primarily it's like that. At least through the uh, the lens that I understand.
Well,
Like
you see, guys,
barring being like born, but like taking the quote unquote religious perspective.
so you see both of you, when I hold you up to, are you going to make that philosophical equation? It's difficult, right? It's difficult to answer the question of who is a Jew, right? It's difficult to come up with a definition that matches what we see, as far as these are clearly Jewish people, and these are clearly Jewish people. And so what rule could we come up with to describe them all, right? So that's a difficult thing to do. And so what the Chachamim did was they came up with just this idea that however someone gets the title, once they get the title, they don't lose it. So you could be born a Jew, you could be naturalized a Jew, but the point is, once you're Jewish, you're Jewish. And otherwise, it opens up to these kinds of very hairy philosophical situations where you're trying to consistently define something, but it's hard to pin down, because we have this idea that people are, there is the mission of Judaism, there's the mission of the Torah, but there's also just the people that are produced by that mission who are of their own accord, whether of their own accord or not, fulfilling the Torah, or not fulfilling the Torah in terms of the mitzvot, but they're fulfilling the mission of the Torah of spreading the awareness of God, or fulfilling God's will, depending on if we go with Darius or Gam. So it's a really, in order to avoid that kind of hair splitting, and to avoid a no true Scotsman situation, they just simply said, regardless of what someone does, once they've got the title, once they're part of the community, they're part of the community.
Yeah, that's correct from my understanding.
Here's the
Darius, you
issue
there?
with that. What do we do about the Barit? We can say that, Jews are, it's a flexible definition. Some Jews are observant, some aren't. But the Pesuk says observance to Torah is a part of the Barit. So what do we do with that? Is there a Barit for the observant and there's a Barit for the non-observant? Is the Barit beyond observance now based on Halakha? What do we do?
No. So the idea is that you can't just get out of the Berit by not observing it. It's not so easy to get out of. that once you're in the covenant takes force. And so even if someone is violating the covenant, or the terms of the covenant, they're still bound by the covenant, and the way that they're dealt with is according to the procedures outlined in the covenant, and not by simply saying, well, that's it, it no longer applies to you. So there's one covenant for everybody. But in terms of the Sinaitic covenant, there's one Sinaitic covenant for all of Israel. But that Sinaitic covenant isn't voided simply by, violating it.
I can understand Darius's intention because if we follow his logic to a conclusion, it's like, so okay, so what if all Jewish people just say, you know what, we don't want to keep it in its vote, we just want to be culturally Jewish or Israeli, whatever, and then what happens to Yahoo from there? So I
Right.
can
So
understand that.
So that would be a case of the nation violating the covenant. That's what we see outlined throughout, the Book of Kings and the Book of the Prophets, the books of the prophets, where we see this is what happens when Israel feels it's no longer bound by the covenant and they just want to be nationally Jewish or nationally Israelite, and not actually do the mitzvot that specify the terms. Right. So we've seen what happens with that. It doesn't end well, but we've seen what happens with that. Um, yeah, Darius,
Yeah, I was gonna say, how would you parse Hafrekim?
say it again.
Hafrekim, like you broke, you all broke. Hafrekim.
Where do you see that in the pasuk? Which pasuk?
Tet Vav, it's after Mitzvotai, Eif Kol Mitzvotai, Le Hafrekim, Eif Beriti.
Which chapter are you in?
26. Vaikra
Oh,
26.
Vayikra. I was in Devarim. That's why before I read Devarim. Okay, my mistake.
I apologize. Vaikra. I'm sorry. I thought we would have. Yeah, that makes more sense. Now you'll understand what my question is. Once you read
Hold
Vaikra,
on.
it'll make more sense about my question.
Okay, let's go to Vayikra. Yeah, I even read it, and you guys were like treating it as if I was reading the right pasukim.
Well, I wasn't
Um,
necessarily looking, but you was flowing. You sounded good, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
okay. Okay, here we go. Um, so we're 14, 15. ואם לא תשמעו לי ולא תעשו את כל המשרות האלה ואם חוקותיי תמאסו ואם את משפטיי תגאל נפשכם לבלתי עשות את כל משרותיי להפריכם את בריתי. Right, so להפריכם is to violate it, not to void it. Right, it's not to make it's hafra here. Hafara is to violate the terms of something, to breach it, but not to render it null.
So,
You understand the
what's from
difference?
a legal? No, I don't. From a legality aspect, what's the difference? 161. Yeah, that's what. Like, yeah, I got it.
I'll put it like this. If you and I make an agreement to do something, and we say, and if one of us breaks the terms of the agreement, here's the penalty for breaking the terms of the agreement. Breaking the terms of the agreement just incurs the penalty. It doesn't then void the agreement itself. We're still bound by the agreement. We're just now in a different phase of the agreement rather than the if we all do what we're supposed to do.
That was brilliant. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's what it means that afal pisha chata Yisrael, even though he did a chait, he's still Yisrael. Meaning you don't lose the status in the covenant just because you violated it.
Yeah, I think that just helped me completely understand. So that means that you wouldn't have violated the covenant. You're just in the terms of the covenant for violation. So it hasn't been annulled. You're just in the violation section.
Right, and
Penalties.
that's basically the theme of the whole parasha. Like if you follow the mitzvot, if you keep the terms of the covenant, then this is the good stuff that happens. If you don't keep the mitzvot, if you violate the terms of the agreement, well, here's the tochacha. Here's the don't say you weren't warned.
So there's no way out of this covenant.
Yeah, it's forever.
That's pretty much what I just realized. Once you're in,
Yeah.
you're in. There is no way
Oh
out.
yeah. Yeah. And it sounds harsh, but it's really for our benefit, meaning that like this is really a good covenant. It's a good deal. But it's the kind of thing that like it's forever. It's a
If
forever
it's a good
commitment.
deal, why haven't we been able to fulfill or live up to the contract? Has there ever been a generation that has lived up to the contract terms?
Yeah, I think there was a few generations that managed, but it's hard because it's hard to accept that level of responsibility. Meaning it's hard to take control of your fate and say, you know, what happens to me is really the result of my decisions and my actions.
Versus putting it on the devil or someone else, society. Yeah, self accountability is hard for a lot of people.
It really is difficult. And so it's difficult for people to say, you know what, I can't get out of it just by messing up. Like it's really easy to adopt like a failure mindset and to be like, you know what, I already messed up, therefore uh, I'm no longer subject to the penalties, I'm no longer subject to the rewards, I just want out. Right? That's an easy thing to say, but it doesn't work like that.
So even a mean himself is still under the covenant.
Even who?
A mean, an M-I-N, a mean, an
I mean,
Epicurus.
exactly right, exactly right, exactly right. You don't get out. There's no out.
Sheesh. I guess my next question has to do with the Sanhedrin. The
Yeah,
Sanhedrin, and can I get some more information as far as like the formulation, the seats, and why can't the Samaritans or the Karaites also have seats on the Sanhedrin even though they're not religious?
they could have seats, but they don't want seats on it yet. We still have to convince them that there's value in joining with us to have a council. Meaning, there's nothing that precludes someone who has a different view about something from joining the Sanhedrin. The question is, will they then accept the authority of the Sanhedrin? And that's something that's a matter of persuasion.
What
So
three points?
how do,
My bad.
can
Go
I
ahead.
let me ask a question
Yeah,
about that point, Darius. So how do you have people on the Sanhedrin when in like Mishnah Torah it talks about people who deny the oral law,
yeah. Did you want to finish that, Gon?
people that deny the oral law, um, like are Epicurus. So like you're
People who teach publicly that the Torah Shebal Peh Chas v'Shalom has no basis, and is just the invention of the opportunistic invention of Later Day Saints. Um, that's a different matter than someone who just has a consistently different ideology and is willing to suspend judgment and to go along with the greater group process. And that's really what the Sanhedrin is about. It's about group process.
but that's what some of these people actually teach. Like that it is an invention and it has no basis in Torah. It's a complete fabrication.
Yeah, I mean, these people
So
are not going to join the Sanhedrin anyway.
I'm just
You
wondering,
see what
like,
I'm saying?
how,
Like,
yeah, like, how would you even
there's
have
nothing
that
that
done?
stops a Karaite. There's nothing that stops a Karaite or a Samaritan from joining the Sanhedrin. In fact, I suspect that Rav Yossi Ish Sreida was a Samaritan. I suspect that, right? And he was like, what, the Av Beitin? Or he was maybe even the Nasi. So,
That
like,
would be crazy.
right. So I don't think anything stops them from it. It's just a question of, will they publicly teach against the authority of the Sanhedrin? You can't be a member of the Sanhedrin teaching against the authority of the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, so,
I agree with that. But what would be your top three tenets you would pose to a Samaritan of the benefit of Sanhedrin today?
It's group process as opposed to like dynastic fiat. which I think is more democratic, and I think that democracy yields better results than non-democracy. I think that the whole rabbinic method of reforming and reformulating the mitzvot and empowering the human court to do that makes more sense and allows the Torah's program to reach a greater number of people in a greater number of places in a greater number of times. And third, I think that it automatic like the idea of being ruled by sages, like having sages instead of politicians, having people who are pursuing wisdom and valuing wisdom and living wisdom. I think that makes a lot more sense than having politicians. And so I think it's a whole different approach to political organization and political discourse that I think has a lot of merit. So those are my top three arguments for Karaites and Samaritans.
So, what's up, everybody? Shalom.
Hey, Shavua Tov.
Shalom, Shavua.
So,
So I think one of the main issues that I believe most Karaites have is what I was kind of overcoming, because I think that when I first started coming into um, this lifestyle, that I was probably looking at this more of a Karaite, because you're looking at human beings, men, being fallible and biased in certain situations in today's day and age. I think everybody in here can agree, like, we have probably heard or seen some things from people in authority that are not necessarily, leadership-esque behavior.
Yeah,
So when you look at the fact that you have people that are eyes wide open on those situations, and they're like, yeah, you want us to submit to this group? Do you have any idea what they do? You have people that have this attitude. And so it's very easy to see how they could not that it could dissuade someone to wanting to submit, because obviously there's the idea
yeah,
also of being ruled over, which I don't think there are too many people that would sign up to be ruled over
yeah,
anyway. So that's my understanding is very limited on it, because of the scope that I'm able to comprehend. But
yeah,
but as it pertains to like just my own day-to-day living, I have, like I said, I would be very afraid of today if we had a Sanhedrin, if we were to get the mix of people that we have today. Personally, I would think that we would be staring down the barrel of a lot of bad things.
So let's evaluate like competing approaches to law here, right? So we can start with the Karaite approach, right? So the Karaim, right, they have like the local authority is the authority, right? It's
Hmm.
you're free to disagree, but ultimately the community is going to do what the local Chacham says,
Right.
right? The problem is then, well, there's twofold. Who says that the Chacham is right, right? And so then group cohesion comes into question. And how do you form a national consensus on that, right? And are we looking really for rule? Are we looking for demagogues? Are we looking for authoritarians? Are we looking for kind of like almost like what we say, a horizontal society, as Rev Power says?
Hmm.
Are we looking for a group dynamic that's typified by persuasion and equal access to a common code, rather than top down hierarchy, right? And so
Right.
how do you achieve national consensus? Well, you get a bunch of sages in a room, a bunch of wise philosophers, lovers of wisdom, get them all together in a room and have them debate what should the law be, right?
Hmm.
What should our national law be so that we can all get on the same page as the nation, right? And so that debate, obviously includes dissenting views and includes all kinds of different perspectives, and functions according to a democratic process, right? And that debate, really arrives at objectively better results than having either a cult, a priestly cult, give the fiats, the fatwas, right? Or by having the local demagogue just, go nuts. And we see that situation today, unfortunately, where, a lot of people reject the authority of the Talmud And I'm talking about, within the Jewish, nation. And we see, what happens with that. Communities, just get all kinds of afflictions, because they're just, I'm saying like social afflictions, not medical afflictions, right?
Right.
But like they get all kinds of social afflictions because, they're just, in a large sense, deviating from the national consensus, which was a pretty good consensus,
Hmm.
insofar as things go. So I understand where the Karaite fear of being ruled by bums are, and it really stresses the need for the judges, the sages, to be of good character. And it's really only when you have a sage of good character that you listen to him.
Hmm.
But you really can't separate the two, someone's wisdom from their ethics. They go hand in hand. That's why there's a lot of compatibility between Stoicism and rabbinic Judaism. Uh,
So,
but
so what about
yeah.
this then, Gil? What about desperate impact? If say for instance we have this group of people who come together and they start poskening on situations that create impacts. Like in times past, did the Hakamim ever make rulings that impacted people, a good bit of people negatively, even though that wasn't the intention? Or did
Oh
they
yeah.
walk those situations back? Or did they just say, that's just what it is, deal with it?
Well, I mean, there's definitely been lots of times when low community leaders made terrible decisions that had, negative impact for generations. One big example of that was the decision that a lot of community leaders made to stay in the lands that were Nazi occupied. That just comes clear to mind. That had disastrous results.
Yeah.
But even things as innocuous as, the Hungarian fight against, dissent and reform by saying, anything new is asur, is prohibited from the Torah. That reactionary stance, ultimately led to tons of Jewish Hungarians or Hungarian Jews converting to Christianity. So, in terms of, Rav Ba'or in the fifth section of the Horizontal Society, which I encourage everyone to read, really goes into, the folly of Israel and how this has happened repeatedly. And basically how it's very easy for, local leaders to make disastrous results. Now the difference, the safeguard is that any other leader can either ignore, or if they're the inheritors of the mantle, they can walk back the previous rulings of previous rabbis. After the Talmud, nothing is binding, and it's really a big argument whether the Talmud is binding. So there's a lot of leeway that community leaders have
Wait,
to
I can't
shrug
let you.
off
I
bad
can't let you get
decisions.
past that. What you just said, because I
Hey
like
Yaakov, how
that.
you doing? Shavua Tov.
Shavuot. Hey man, don't mean to interrupt, but I just moved to Baltimore. A Jewish community is great out here.
Cool.
I'll talk after you're done though. But yeah, keep going. I like what you were saying.
All right, cool, man. Glad to have you aboard. No, feel free. If you have a question, feel free to jump in with a question. We're pro questions.
No. The statement about the Talmud being not binding. I think that's
Well, it's a kind of thing.
it's
It's the kind of thing where, like, for example, Rambam is, adopting the opinion of his teachers, the Rimegash, which is ultimately sourced in the Rif, that the Khatimat of the Talmud and Rabbinan Rabbi Sofarah means that the Talmud is the last binding law on everybody, and that it's predicated on the Khatimat of the Talmud having the Haskama of Ruv Israel. And the question is, does it really historically have the Haskama, the agreement, the consensus of Ruv Israel? Now, I'm a Maimonidean. I'm big into Rambam. And so my natural inclination is to go with Rambam on this, and the Andalusian school, which again is sourced in the Maghrebi school. It should be noted, though, that, for example, the Gaonim, into the period of the medieval period, and this is where the Karaites started their rebellion, right? The Gaonim did not view the Talmud as finally binding on everyone. They viewed the rulings of the Gaonim as finally binding on everyone. And this was the conflict between the Gaonim and Rambam, and the Gaonim and the Karaites, and the Gaonim and the other Gaonim. And then you had other people who said that really there's no such thing as a binding law, and there's no such thing as national consensus, and this is like the view of the Karaites, right? So we have different views represented. My view is that the whole principle of the Talmud is persuasion, and that while once upon a time the court system enacted punishments according to what is written in the Talmud, we don't have that's not currently on the table right now. And so when we talk about the convincing someone of the relationship, the binding relationship with the Talmud, that's a matter of persuasion, and it's a matter of offering the advantages of Talmudic thinking and offering the advantages of the Talmudic tradition, and letting the rulings of the Chazal speak for themselves, with
So,
our emotion.
so you would have to follow the rulings of. It would have to go back to that era's Tanamim, right? So you'd have to follow whatever the rabbis during that period. Or we're talking about what, the year 200 during that period, which is like on the border of the Amorim, right? So
Yeah.
like you would have to go off what they said was binding within the Talmud to make that conclusion, right or wrong?
When you say to make that conclusion, you mean to make the conclusion that the Gemara is binding?
Right.
Yeah, well, the if you're asking about the history of the Talmud, it's like this. So you have the way that the law was implemented and practiced in the Second Commonwealth while the temple stood. Right, this was the period when you still had the worship and the sacrifices in the temple. This was the period where the Sanhedrin was active in making new rulings. Right, what then happened is that under Roman occupation, the Sanhedrin was disbanded eventually, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Right, and it moved to now the political court moved to Yavne. Right, and what happened is that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi started trying to organize, based on a project that started already with Rabbi Akiva, started to organize the traditions of people who still remembered what had been going on during the Second Commonwealth, right? And they started organizing those traditions, and those became the Mishnah and the Baraitot, right? The Tosefta and the Sifra and the Sifrei, right, and the Mechiltot and all the other Tanaitic literature, right? So those Tanaitic testimonies as to what the law was, right, became the curricula, right, the source material for the study program in academies throughout the country, right, throughout the four regions of the land, right. And eventually in the diaspora, right? This is where Babel comes in, right? And so what happened is now where originally the original situation was law was simply what the court said it was. Then law was what we remembered the court said and how we implemented it. And then it was law became, well, now that we're in exile basically and we've accepted our situation, how are we going to harmonize our life and our current situation with the ways of our ancestors, right? And that process of harmonization is the whole process of Talmud, right? And then we're already approaching the early medieval period, right? This is the late classical era, the early medieval era. Now we're talking about the rise of Islam, right? This is what's going on in the world, right? And so at this point, you have the Talmudic tradition developing both in Israel and in Babel, right? Earlier in Israel, and then it was the center moved to Babel, right, to Babylonia, right? And so what you have is basically a new approach to law. Law is what the schools of jurists say it is, right? And
Okay,
what this
right. So, okay, yeah, because this can get really complex, and it is.
sure.
But and I know there's some arguments against it, probably. Because like I noticed the community I live in now is very pro Gemara, right?
Sure.
But so you're saying that it's all about harmonization and it's not about actual legal binding, and there people take it upon themselves
No, no, no,
to
no,
make.
no, 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 no. This was still in terms of national institutions. It was legally binding, just as Israeli law is binding on Israeli citizens. The question is now in our day today, what is our relationship with this law? Right? Meaning people who were Judeans were bound by Talmudic law. Are people who not Judeans, right, are Samaritan Israelites, are they bound by Judean law?
Are they
That's the
in
question.
Are they in Jewish communities?
No, they're in Samaritan Israelite communities.
But the
I would.
Samaritans aren't recognized by the whole of Judaism as to be Jews, are they?
They're not recognized by all Jews because they're not Jews, because as they say, they're not Jews, they're not Yehudim, they're not from the tribe of Judah.
Okay. But they still keep the 613 laws.
They keep what they keep. As the Mishnah says, a Samaritan is trusted in what they keep.
I don't know.
They keep a much earlier form of the covenant.
That complicates the argument a little bit. I don't know.
It definitely complicates it, which is why I presented it as a nuanced thing. It's a complicated issue. And while I personally lean towards the idea that the Talmud is binding, I certainly understand the counter arguments that someone would marshal based on the facts of Israelite history.
So my thing would be more so, would a person be? So I can just see it now. Somebody next to like a vacuum cleaner or something.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. All right. So my thing is in the event that say Sanhedrin is reformed, and we have all these different fringes of Judaism. Could you see a situation coming up where they're like, hey, conservative Judaism, Reformed Judaism, done. Any of these other smaller groups that we don't recognize, you're not Jews. You're all
Yeah.
done. All of the
And
people who have converted to these fringe groups, we don't accept your conversion at all, even more so than what we do now. Is there a situation where that could happen?
No, because it has to be a body that achieves national consensus, and national consensus includes these groups.
So, because I was just looking at some news articles and just looking at the opinions of some rabbis and what they consider, like the Orthodox rabbis, the ultra Orthodox, the Haredi rabbis. They look at, Reform and conservative Judaism as a whole other religion that has nothing to do with Orthodoxy in their definition.
Maybe Orthodoxy is a whole other religion. It has nothing to do with the Talmud's definition. I don't know.
See, so here's the thing. I know. Trust me.
Yes, sir.
Me and you. I get that. I feel that 100%. But I'm just looking at it from that perspective that they're the ones that are making the argument. They're the ones making the most noise. It doesn't. It appears that other people are like, "Hey, you keep what you keep." You know what I mean? We're not here to, you know, give
Look,
give inquisition to some other group. So I'm just curious from the perspective of, well, hey, what if these people do actually manage to form something, and this thing does end up becoming quite the machine that I believe it can be, but then people are being left out of the greater commonwealth of that system, and they
the,
don't have any
Ortho-
rights.
the Orthodox are a minority. In order for something to achieve national legitimacy, it's got to represent everybody. So that's basically my answer to you, is that like it's a self-resolving issue. I mean that
Hmm.
only something which represents the people, can affect the people.
Okay.
It's a shame that Tandil isn't here. He had a great question. But anyone else have any questions?
I had a question. I've been studying a lot of Rabbi Akiva, and I had a question on the significance of the 49 aspects of Torah. I was told that it relates to the 49 days of counting of the Omer, but I was
Yeah.
wondering any more aspects of the number 49 that you could bring into relevance of the aspects of the Torah, and then it's kind of a secondary question. It's a little deep one. I've been getting deep into the aspects of Akiva. Kind of states, or he kind of alludes to the fact that the letters within the Torah, the letters that make up Hebrew, actually existed before Hashem himself. And I just wanted to hear your view on that. I know that's kind of a deeper question, but
Yeah. Okay, so let's answer first and second. So you also have in the Baraita that's appended to Pirkei Avot, you have the 48 aspects of what makes a good Talmid of the Chachamim. And the basic idea with all of these is that Torah is something that unfolds in 49 dimensions. That it's not, well, actually, I just saw something. Who said this? I really want to quote it. Oh, it was Rev Jeremy Kagan quoting the Maharal, I believe. That unlike, I think it was quoting the Maharal. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but it's basically that unlike the physical creation, the material world, which exists in 6 or 7 dimensions, the Torah exists in 49, and so it is accessed through 49 levels or 49 facets, with some element of progression to them. So it's an unfolding process, and so there's this idea that the letters, sorry, not the letters, the Omer, like the period of counting and of perfecting our character, as the Kabbalists took it, for between Pesach and Shavuot. The idea of these are the qualities of a student of the sages. The idea that these are the facets of which the Torah is, the meaning in Torah is generated, right? All of these things are relating to the idea that the Torah is unfolding through 49 dimensions. Now that's for your first question. For your second question, I don't think it's Rabbi Akiva was suggesting chas v'shalom that anything preceded God, but our perception of, for example, of God is mediated by the names of God, right? Which are the ideas that we concretize around the infinity of the Creator, right? And so those ideas, those names, are built of elements, are built of signs, are built of letters, right? And those letters are combined to then generate, to produce words that generate meaning, right? And so that's the idea, that our ideas of God are preceded by the elements of which our ideas of God are comprised. Does that make sense to you, Yaakov?
it makes sense. But so they were basically saying that Rabbi Akiva had reached the 50th gate, and that's what made him greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu only reached 49.
Right.
What does the 50th gate comprise of? Is that Hashem himself or a partis, or
Cap.
Maybe it's some way. I mean, I can't say for sure. I haven't reached it myself, but I would
it'd
assume
be like partis, or
it's some way of integrating the previous 49 with the material world. Meaning, if we're talking about a progression 49 through 50, then 50 integrates the 49, makes it one unified whole.
right?
I think it's Cap is just anybody who claims to be higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. It just sounds like
Facts.
Cap.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold claim,
Yeah,
and
it's huge
I
cap.
can't address it, but I can
It's like a
address the relation.
sombrero cap. It's like a sombrero cap. It's like to be.
I can just say that
I mean,
basically,
that's the view of the Kabbalists. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
if you're
that's
outside
the
of Kabbalah, then it's not your view. But like,
some people have that view, some people don't have that view, even among the Kabbalists. But Nathanael has joined us. Nathanael, Shavua Tov, how are you doing?
Shavuot.
Shabbat Tov, Mavorach. We're good. Mother's Day, so we just had a meal.
Nice,
Yeah,
wonderful. You have great mothers in your life.
I agree.
You had some great questions that you posted in the group chat. Would you like to share them?
Yeah, I'll get them out. The first one, uh, uh, wait, did I have more than one question or just one question?
I don't know. I
Uh,
thought you had multiple questions.
no, I have one. The question was, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Historically, I've heard Sfaradi Hakamim had day jobs for their parnasah, and they didn't really rely on donations or a salary for their parnasah for teaching Torah. They had like a day job.
Yeah,
The Torah. It seems that there's many sources against teaching Torah and charging for it or taking a
yeah,
salary for it. And so I put in the question. I don't really want to ask the question from a place of judgment against those who do it. I just want to
sure,
understand the halakhic thinking behind permitting it when there's so
sure,
many sources prohibiting it.
sure. Um, so first of all, let me say my answer is biased. I do have a Patreon, as my wife would like me to remind everybody. And I am someone who does seek out sponsors, patrons at very reasonable amounts to support my production of Jewish content and the work I do in the Jewish community. Now, that said, right, and I'm just being fair, full disclosure. Um, I'm coming from a person that's what I have. I've wrestled with this for a long time because there's very clear statements, as you alluded to, that really denigrate the idea of taking any kind of money, any kind of compensation whatsoever. You have the idea in Pirkei Avot, don't make the Torah, a pick to, to work with it, to drive benefit from it. You have the idea in I think it's the Sifra or Sifrei. I think it's in the Sifrei, where God said, just like I taught for free, you got to teach for free. And there's really this idea of that it's the inheritance of Israel, and who are you to charge someone to help them come into their inheritance, right? And so that's basically, some pretty strong classical values against it, and we see that exactly as you said. The sages, most of them, work day jobs. I have a day job. I manage inventory in a bookstore. And so there's certainly no shame in working. And it's certainly encouraged throughout the Torah literature. Um, the problem is that there's bills to pay, right? Those bills got to be paid, right? And why do I, for example, why did Rav Kafach permit, for example, taking a salary for teaching Torah? He said if no one took a salary, no one would teach, right? We got to pay rent, we got to pay electricity, we got to pay for food on the table, got to pay for medicine, right? We got to pay bus fare, right? All these things cost money, right? And every second that I spend working in a bookstore, every second that someone spends, pumping gas at a station, every second stocking shelves in a grocery, that second's away that from what they could be contributing things of much higher value to society. And the truth is that society has changed. It used to be, if you look at how like it was in the times of the Talmud, it used to be not just in the times of the Talmud, but in traditional Jewish communities up until basically modernity, the crisis of industrialism. But sages were respected, honored, and economically supported by the community. The social safety net in general was so much stronger back in the day. You didn't have homeless people. You didn't have people so poor that they couldn't afford basic necessities. The community stepped in, through tzedakah, through gemilut chasadim, through gemachim, through all the different things that we developed to really support the community. And so it was a totally different ballgame. Now, in like this, what they call it, post-capitalist society or whatever it is. I mean, it's you know, there's almost zero support. There's zero, um, you know, there's zero communal infrastructure that really cares for everybody. That's really open and accessible and vibrant. And so you're left with a situation where people have to choose between, well, do I work in a bookstore, or do I teach another class? I only have so many hours in a day. What am I supposed to do with those hours? So I'm hoping, for example, from my perspective, that, well, if I could get sponsors, if I could get patrons, right, I could, put that together, and all right, then I'll be able to cover my basic. I don't have big, big expenses. I'll cover my bases, and I'll produce some darn good Jewish content, and that's how I've landed in my rationalization for a while. Why I will accept it, because the truth is, Rav Kafak was right, which is that I can't produce that content now because I gotta pay rent. I gotta pay for food. I gotta pay for. I got like meds I gotta pay for. You know what I'm saying? Like I got stuff I gotta pay for, right? And that's not even counting that if Natanya and I had a kid. Like wow, that beyond Liel, like like that would be a whole other range of expenses. So it's like that's the cheshbon. And so while it's true that, many Sephardi Chachamim were able to make it, with a day job, think about all the people who could have been great Chachamim too, but because of the day job, couldn't get there, right? And think about
Yeah.
what we could do as a community to get our community back, where we're really empowering everyone, man, woman, and child, who's got something to contribute to Torah, so that they can really contribute that to Torah.
Facts. One point I'll bring up to add to that is you could go through all the right steps and all the right channels, everything that people say you should do, land a job that on paper you should be able to make a livable wage, but in fact it's far below livable.
Oh
And
yeah.
so you've got people with PhDs who are, suffering and struggling. So yeah, I hear I hear the sentiment behind what Rav Kafak and what you're saying. It definitely is true.
Why take money for teaching Torah? Because the struggle is real. Now I'll say that, like, one of the reasons why I prefer, instead of like teaching a gated course or something where you had to pay for the course, like, why do I just set it up a thing where, like, look, if you benefit from the work I'm doing, from the things I'm teaching or whatever, that you want to, support it. Why do I choose that model? Because there's a disconnect. It's like, look, you want to support it. You want to help me with these bills, help me with these bills. Once I got the basis taken care of, then, like, I can rely on it. Then I'll just produce a whole bunch of content. Like, that's what it is. Like that. I'm going to do my thing. You're going to do your thing, and Shalom al Yisrael. It's. I think that I try to. I still can't rationalize the model of, you know, you're charging someone for Torah. That's hard to swallow. And
Yeah, I got an
I've
opinion on this.
yeah,
If
sure.
you Sorry for the background noise, guys. I'm in the gym, but if my rabbi was heavily against this, like heavily, if it's Torah, which meaning the first 5 books, if it's any of that teaching that's being charged for, that's a
Yeah,
no. That's a no go.
for sure.
Maybe you can make an argument for the other books, Talmud, Gemara. You could probably make an argument. There's nothing wrong with asking for donations. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. But if it's not one of your, like, let's say you wrote a book and then you were charging, there's nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
if it's like it's a Torah teaching on a set of videos, like, or a set of podcasts and a course or something that's being sold, that would be a problem. And he was heavily against that. Now, some of these guys that Gil mentioned, yeah, Gil didn't really mention it outwardly, but some of these Hakamins come from very wealthy families, such as the Syrian Jews, who are very
Right.
wealthy in Brazil today. A lot of these people were either came from banking dynasties or different families, and even prior to that, they were desert traders. Like, a lot of these people were roaming around in the desert for thousands of years. So that's why they were easily able to get by as being merchants or traders, and study on the side, or have their parents support or the community support them, like Gil stated. But
Yeah. Rambam
as
is a great example of that. Rambam,
yeah,
up until his brother was lost at sea, and lost all of their family wealth, Rambam was supported by his brother. His all of his studies, his early studies, his early work on the Mishnah, his early draft of the Mishnah Torah, it was all supported by his brother. And there was a different economic arrangement, and you know I still feel guilty about it. I do these classes. I don't charge anything for these things on Clubhouse or whatever it is. I don't even know if there's a way to charge it. I'm I have if what I've learned and what I've benefited from in my life means anything, then I've got to share that with people. Like if the Torah that I've merited, and just not even merited, but just is given as a gift to me in so many different ways from so many different sources of all the people I've met in my life, like if that Torah has any value, then I've got to share it. I also got to pay bills, but like I can't, even if it's like a book I write or something, I got to find a way to share that content, that information with as many people as possible, because it's otherwise it's disrespecting the truth of what I've learned, itself. So I this is, Nathaniel, you asked a question that is something that I've personally wrestled with. It took me a long time to come to even the situation, the position that I'm at. um, but yeah, it's a good question, and the people who justify taking a salary for teaching Torah, they're just trying to pay their bills. you know at the end of the day, if that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. Now it can be abused, and you see sometimes like communal rabbis, they have insane salaries and insane perks, and it's like it's too much. It's like so much materialism and so much consumerism. You're like, this can't be the Torah's way. But that's not, a problem in principle. That's just a problem with how they're executing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just got.
there's not too many Joel Osteen rabbis out here in the world. I don't even think
Yeah,
there are any. Yeah,
I just got to go with, my rabbi or student Mordechai Eliyahu. Mordechai Eliyahu said never take money for the Torah.
yeah.
He's suffering from 4 stages of cancer right now. We
Oh
tried to
wow.
raise $20,000 on the GoFundMe. We're still
Yeah.
raising that money. We're about 12 to 15,000 in. I think we're almost
Refuah Shalema, man.
15,000 in. And he's
Post
told
the
us
link.
he's told us. I gotta see if I still have it here, man. Because
Post the link in the chat.
yeah, he's told us secrets that that a father's only supposed to tell his firstborn son.
Nice.
Secrets of Rosh Hashanah, secrets of Yom Kippur, and some of those are passed down from rabbi to firstborn son, and he's told us that for completely free. So I couldn't imagine, like, that's. I just try to think about his image, but all of us don't have the same rabbis, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Who
if your rabbi approves, that's why I agree with whatever your rabbi says. You know what I'm saying?
who are you talking
Yeah.
about? Mordechai Eliyahu?
No, he's talking about
My
his
rabbi,
rabbi. He's
yeah.
a student of Mordechai Leao.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Chacham Mordechai Eliyahu, but you're talking about a different
Well,
Mordechai Eliyahu.
there's only
No,
one
no, he's talking
Mordechai
about it's the same
Eliyahu,
one. He's
yeah.
talking about the same one. This is a student. He's talking about a student of
Oh,
of,
I got you. I
of
got you.
Mordechai Leao. Yeah. But yeah, so it's a tough thing, and I try not to hold back from you guys. I try just to share, the true vibe as I receive it, as I feel it, as I know it. And if there's something that's a secret along the way, I pray to Hashem in the moment that I deliver it right. But I try not to hold it back. And Bezrat Hashem, the bills will be paid, and I'll be able to produce a lot more content like this. And like I've got like a lot of ideas for podcasts. One of the ideas for a podcast I want to do, a weekly podcast, is I want to go through each parasha and just like totally just read it like me. Just read it with all the questions and with all the associations and with all the all the allusions and everything, and just really wrestle with the text. It's like wrestling with God is the name of the podcast. So that's like an example of something that I think would have a lot of benefit, for people to see. Here's how a Talmudic Jew wrestles with the Word of God. That's something that I think has benefit, to have more public classes like this. I want to do the Gior class on the Gior course. Like there's a lot of stuff that like really has a lot of benefit. That's not even to mention, the congregation Share Shalom, and all the stuff we're doing with building a congregation here that's egalitarian and diverse here in Jerusalem. So I mean, basically, at this point, I think the work and the intent speaks for itself, and with your guys' continued participation, that this should just grow. I'm glad that every week we see that there's more and more people joining, more and more people have questions, more and more people are sharing their views and their opinions. I think
and new
that's
people,
wonderful. New
new
people.
face, new people. Yeah,
Yeah.
May-
Would
Can
I need
someone?
to subscribe to your Patreon? Because I definitely want to be a part of your course, and as I go through my own, I like to work alongside whoever I go through.
Sure, you can find it. Let me. How do I find this link? You know, I'm like not the greatest at the self promotion.
How long before
Uh,
you're done with Sneaker?
at this point, it's a couple of years, just because this book is taking me forever. But I'm writing a book called Living Law, and it's basically my take on why and how we do all of the halakha, and it's basically going through Rambam's introduction to the Mishneh Torah, kind of almost line by line, and really arguing with it, analyzing it, really dissecting it, and really seeing, is this true? Is it borne out? Is it something that makes sense? And really defending it ultimately in the light of history and other texts. I'm posting in the chat right now a link to the Patreon. You can check it out there. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. But yeah, so that's basically what's holding up the smicha, is that I've got to write this book for it.
So
I
it's
had a,
like
I
you're
had a,
doing a dissertation.
Yeah, it's like basically I got to do a dissertation, a rabbinic dissertation.
I got you.
All right, is there any more
yeah, I had a
questions, guys?
question.
This has been a great session.
Did you go do your yeshiva directly through Israel, or did you have a letter from an American rabbi that allowed you entrance into Israeli yeshiva? Because that's what I
When
had a
I
kind of question about that for myself. So,
So I'm not learning in an Israeli yeshiva. I'm learning directly and privately with Rav Chaim Ovadia. It's a private semicha.
so you're still in the States or whatever country?
No, I'm in Jerusalem. But I'm saying that it's not through. I didn't have to have like a letter of recommendation.
Oh, how did you skip that based on your Torah knowledge or what?
Yeah, I mean, just based on my interviews with them.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of
All right.
Rabbi
Any
Chaim
questions?
Ovadia,
Yeah.
man, I listened to his Bereshit Aleph breakdown.
Oh, nice.
Whoa,
The
that
man's a
was crazy.
genius.
Like that
In
was
my
crazy.
Gam, you can see, in my opinion, he's the most Maimonidean rabbi alive today.
What?
That's my opinion.
More than Rabbi Halevi.
Yeah.
Interesting.
wow.
I think that Rav Chaim Ovadia,
That's
and he's not a big fan of Rambam, which is ironic.
what? How is that? What? The greatest paradox in modern Jewish parlance.
I know, right? That's the state of the
What?
Galut. That's the state of the Galut. The most Maimonidean rabbi alive is not a fan of Rambam.
That doesn't even. Nah, bro. I can't. My brain can't make sense of that.
No, so that's where I come in, and I try to reconnect, the his heritage with the Andalusian heritage, because he's
Uh,
from Iraq, and he's got
mm-hmm.
a completely different. He's connected, through a completely different way to Torah.
Yeah.
He's not from Andalus. He's not from the Syrians, the Chaladim, the Teimanim. He's got his own thing, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's I connect with it, and so I come in with the Rambam, and he comes in with the anti-Rambam, and we make some beautiful Torah.
Yeah, I like him and Rabbi Daniel's perspective. Like on basically when I listen to them, I hear liberating the people, and like through intelligence and through like transparency. And I don't hear
Yeah,
that a lot from a lot of Rabbanim today.
yeah, and I respect where Rav Chaim is coming from in terms of he's against those interpretations of Rambam which like make Rambam out to be a dictator and the Mishneh Torah out to be a set of fundamentalist fatwas.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what he's against. He's like, no, halakha is a vibrant living system, and my whole point is
Mm-hmm.
Rambam's halakha is a vibrant living system, and so therefore, really, we're all talking about the same system. We just all got to see it, right?
Yeah, because this week's Gemara class, we started with like the pasuk about an eye for an eye,
Yeah,
and it traces to the mission of the Gemara, and he explained basically how the Hakamim like use the Torah to formulate, I guess, more humane meanings to try to keep up with like the prevalent needs of the Jewish community at that time. So
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Yo, Les, can you mute the speaker
Oh, my
or the
fault.
microphone? No, it's all good. Yeah, no, but the Dirasha, if you look, like I was saying about the Talmudic tradition, Talmudic worldview earlier, like it's a way of harmonizing, right? And it's a way of harmonizing horizontally and harmonizing vertically, right? Diachronically, or synchronically, horizontally, and diachronically, vertically through history. So it's really the Talmudic way is to bring things together, is to make them more humane, to make them more open, more cosmopolitan, more egalitarian. That's the Talmudic way. So when I evaluate, you know, um, Reb Chaim as a Maimonidean thinker and rabbi, I'm not just evaluating him for his views and his skepticism or his philosophical rationalism or whatever it is, but it's also for he would fit right in Al Andalus. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
You
yeah,
know.
definitely. You can hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, this is where did you get this from? That thought about one reality being like the ideal and the other being the actual. That never even occurred to me, like as a supposition. Ridiculous,
Yeah. No, the
and it
guy's
makes
a
total
genius.
sense. Like what?
Yeah. No, the guy's a genius. Listen, guys, I gotta go. It's been real. I really appreciate all the questions, all the opinions and contributions, and
I
hope
got
everyone
one
has a
question
great
before you
week.
go.
Okay, yeah.
So, what do we have to do to get you to finish your drush or your commentary on horizontal society?
I gotta. I mean, honestly, so promote the Patreon. If I can get, I'll tell you what it is. I just need $1,500 a month, and I'm good. Like, life is
Okay.
cheap here. I have a dual income. Like, I don't need a lot of money, right? I'm working like as in a bookstore now. I don't have time to make these classes, to make these hour-long podcasts, to upload them, to edit them, to make the dapin mekorot, all this kind of stuff. I just don't have the time, But if I could get the Patreon to providing a stable income, then I'd be like, all right, that's it. I'm just doing it, and I'm
Okay.
lit. So, like, that's, if you want
Well,
hard
we'll
tax, that's
subscribe
like
today.
literally hard tax.
We'll all share it and we'll subscribe today. And because about the shipment will happen too.
Bezrato Barach. And honestly, I'm just happy to continue doing these classes regardless of anything. And, I'm just, I really appreciate, like I said, sharing what I've been gifted with and however I can continue to share it. And if you guys have any ideas for posts I could make, whether blog posts or Facebook posts or whatever it is, stuff that'd be helpful, let me know. And I'll definitely put stuff out there. You can follow me on Facebook, you can follow me on Twitter. I don't post so much on
Hey
Twitter.
guys, I posted his GoFundMe. I finally got it. So
Beautiful.
I got your Patreon too.
Cool.
I'm gonna let you know my journey, man, because I'm seriously thinking about doing it. Pulling the trigger, but I still have a grip on this secular world, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm gonna be talking to my rabbi here about. Like I said, I just moved to a new Jewish community. I love it here in
Nice.
Baltimore. It's an even bigger community than Boston was, which I was shocked about. I didn't think anywhere other than New York was bigger than Boston. So
Wow.
I'm really happy to be here. I'm going 6 years in onto my conversion, so I'm still trying to finish. And yeah, that's what I'm dealing with, man. But
Baslacha, man.
thank you, man. I have your Patreon here. And
Awesome.
I'll definitely keep you updated. Appreciate it.
Yeah, guys. Well, look, I want to see everyone who came today. I want to see you all here next week, same time, same place, 9:45 my time. I guess that's 2:45 Eastern, and then you figure out the rest. This was a really great session, guys. We really touched on some great Torah, and also let's help out this rabbi through Yaakov's rabbi in the GoFundMe. Sounds like the guys really need some help, and let's all contribute something. So anyway, Shavua Tov,
Shavua Tov.
Shavuot tov.
Shavua Tov, guys.